Alright, today is Vegapunk Day, bitches. We're talking about Vegapunk. And obviously, as I was saying in my review, I am now heavily invested in this Vegapunk for Revolutionaries theory. Because it was pretty much a heavily debated topic over the past couple of years and stuff. Everyone sort of believed it, especially with Kuma and stuff. I was even saying that Sabo might have fucked over Dragon by, having Kuma basically saved from Marijua, because maybe he had, Kuma become that slave on purpose in order to map out a map of Marijua more directly, so he could plan an attack more so, right? That was my kind of main focus idea of why I thought Saba might have screwed over Dragon in that sense, but however, that didn't come to pass, and now we're having Vegapunk be introduced as a woman, which is, if all the mentions of Vegapunk being in a he before indicates anything, it could indicate that Ivankov, did the whole devil fruit ability on him, and then he became a woman, which would increase the revolutionary stock sky high, and that would be interesting, very much so. But also there's another idea that he makes clones of himself in a way, or makes somewhat bodies that he can change his consciousness into, which means he can fool the government by having a body as in female Vegapunk, and then the actual male Vegapunk is, working for the government, or vice versa, where like the actual Vegapunk might be working, or no, sorry, working for the revolutionaries, or vice versa, where like the actual Vegapunk might be working for, the government, and then he might have his female version working for the revolutionaries, but still technically working for the government. It's very tough. There's a lot of ways to look into it, but it's interesting because to me, I am more sure about this theory than ever before because of this chapter. Because, alright, if this is the literal Vegapunk body, okay, Ivankov stocks, by the way, up. If Ivankov is able to get into Egghead Island without any issue, mans must be busted, I'm telling you. Ivankov is probably... How strong do we think Ivankov is? Like, off topic real quick, how strong do we think Ivankov is? I think... Like, imagine Ivankov top 20. Imagine Ivankov versus Akainu, boys. Oh, that'd be class. I do wonder, because obviously... He's like Dragon's right-hand man, right? So at the end of the day... He's probably, like, really strong. Probably at least similar to Sabo in a degree, right? He'd have to be, to some level. But that's not really important right now. We're talking about Vegapunk and his/her relationship with the government and the revolutionaries. Like, and it would make sense because Egghead Island is like this big futuristic island. And like to have it be, the revolutionaries are all about, evolving humanity and getting out of the stagnation of the government. And what a better way to do that than to basically facade your revolution as development for the government and in the government's favor, but have a kill switch in so it can switch over to like Dragon. And that would be very interesting because it would make Dragon's idea of Dragon being weaker than we actually initially thought and him being more so of a tactician make more sense, because we'd have him have like basically a kill switch that he can switch, and then all the government's dogs are suddenly part of the revolutionaries, which is quite interesting for the Seraphim particularly. But I do find this quite interesting because I feel like this will lead on to maybe stuff happens with Vegapunk. Obviously he has to keep up the facade, or she has to keep up the facade for a while if this is the case, and we're going to have a more antagonistic kind of scientist type of character, which I'm really looking forward to because we'll get some sci-fi One Piece, baby. Alright, like that's going to be fun to see. Some really cool inventions, some Frankie power-ups, you know what I'm saying? And to see that happen is going to be very cool, because we'll get, hopefully this means we'll get lore on the revolutionaries and stuff. And again, we have the Caesar cover story, so Caesar might pop up again. We might get a Mads like a reunion, because if they're basically bringing all the beast pirates to government facilities, you could hypothetically say maybe Vegapunk requested Queen to be brought to him, so we get a Queen, Caesar and Vegapunk reunion, which might bring out the idea that he's working for the revolutionaries, or he might need to out himself in a degree. Or maybe it's when he meets Luffy. You know, maybe Luffy's the big person that basically changes the tides. Maybe you know what, for now I'm going to call her she, because at this point we don't know. It's just the 0.2 that makes me think it's like a clone, or a genetically modified clone of some kind. So we're just going to rock with the she for now, because it's weird switching between them every different time. Anyway, so like that could force her to basically out herself as a revolutionary, or some events, or the events on Hachinosu, or different things. And it could be entirely different. Like, she might just work for Sword, and that could be maybe she was the inciting incident for Sword that set it up alongside Garp, and that might be working alongside the revolutionaries, because it's entirely possible if Garp is the head of the revolutionaries, or the head of the Sword, they may be working slightly alongside the revolutionaries in some way, because we know Garp, especially after Marineford, understands that family is more important than his job. He realized he made that mistake at Marineford, and he might not want to make it again. And Vegapunk being involved in that kind of makes sense. And the thing is with Vegapunk, I feel like the way they're going to go with her is that she just wants to make some really cool shit. You know, she doesn't care whose side she's on, but it's like she thinks being able to take from both sides is really cool. And she may be a third agent, hell. You know what I mean? She may be working for the government under the guise of being working for the revolutionaries, undercover with the government, under the guise of getting information from the revolutionaries, making it so the government have a better counterattack. And that would be interesting to see how Dragon actually handles that, and how he might fight back against that. But the reason I don't think that's the case is because of Kuma protecting the Straw Hat ship. And that's why I'm very much intrigued by this. You know, maybe she protected the ship solely because she knows about the technology used and the wood used, and she wants to inspect it for herself. That's entirely possible. Sure, we have her picking up the ship here now in her giant iron giant looking fucking robot, which is so cool. I really want her to use that more, because that is going to be so cool to see. A General Frankie versus giant robot Vegapunk. Boys, what a fist fight. Weaving, dodging, all that type of shit. That'd be cool to see a robot fist fight. And with the sci-fi theme going on, I would love to see that. And we get to see a Frankie strut his stuff in that sense, you know what I mean? But my point being here is that could be an easy way to write him as an antagonist, which I'm looking forward to seeing, because if Vegapunk is the antagonist of this arc, we're going to see like maybe her up against Luffy, which would be very interesting. A more sci-fi approach to the fight, more so than Caesar was. Caesar kind of didn't do that for me too much. But then you think, maybe not. Maybe Smoker's going to be the antagonist, because the likelihood of him showing up is very high. And then we're obviously going to have, if Vegapunk is part of the revolutionaries, which I'm big on now for many reasons that I said before, it kind of makes the whole Bonnie's whole role here very interesting, and it sets up for a very interesting turn of events in the coming arc, which is her reaction. Like, her basic need for Vegapunk here is she wants to give out to him for whatever reason, or kick his ass. Her ass, right? She wants to kick her ass, basically, because she's annoyed at the fact that she brainwashed Kuma and now he's a slave. And this could lead to many different ways. This could be what leads to the outing of Vegapunk, because she gets sick and she yells and she's like, how the fuck could you do this to Kuma? I don't care if that dragon bastard told you to do shit. You are hurting whoever Kuma is to her, whatever. Her husband, her fucking son, her brother, her I don't know, fucking uncle from another mother or some shit. I don't fucking know, alright? But Kuma is important to her some way. Her vice captain, I don't know. But it's important to see here that this could be what pushes Vegapunk over the edge. In fact, we could see a Bonnie versus Vegapunk fight, which would be very interesting, in my opinion. To see Bonnie strut her stuff against Vegapunk. But I kind of feel like Frankie might take that place. Because Vegapunk might be the type of person where she gets annoyed that Frankie basically used all her technology. Or maybe she's intrigued. Maybe that's the whole thing. Maybe that's why we're not necessarily in danger here, because she takes the Straw Hats that we have and kind of experiments on them, quote unquote, right? And then we get Frankie being explored and maybe a breakout and different things. And it's going to be really interesting to see. as this is definitely going to help Frankie evolve as a combatant, and I'd love to see what happens next. And all the hints and all the to back up this for a final point here, because I know we've been talking just generally about Vegapunk instead of the overall idea of Vegapunk being a revolutionary. I do want to say the last 4 chapters seem interconnected in some regard. Obviously, it started off with the Kobe incident, then we got the revolutionary chapters. Well, no, revolutionary chapters, then we got the Kobe incident, then we got more revolutionary chapters, and now we're getting this. So my big point here is, let's see what happens. Not only do we get a Caesar cover story, we get a revolutionaries being talked about a lot, them being very important in the last 4 chapters since Wano ended, and now we get Vegapunk revealed. It seems like it's all setting up for something. And then the Frankie being decidedly replaced by the Sunny on his wanted poster could definitely hint at some interesting stuff in relation to Vegapunk and how Vegapunk might find this interesting, might try. Maybe Vegapunk knows what this really is, and he's like, "Oh, we need to sort this out." Maybe she's like, "Oh fuck, we need to sort this out, man. This is gonna be some shit if I don't get to research this, right?" And maybe we get a thing where she is hostile because she knows this might be Pluton again. Maybe that's what Frankie did. He built a Pluton ship. I do think the Sunny is going to be important after this, and I don't know, and we could see a thing where it's like, all right, after Luffy became a Yonko, and this is the final thing I'm going to say before I basically end it off, is that after Luffy became a Yonko, Dragon's like, I need to make sure he doesn't mess with any of my plans, right? So so he gives Vegapunk an order, not necessarily to tell him where to go, but if they run into him, to basically make sure Luffy doesn't fuck up any of Dragon's initial plans. And that would be interesting. So Vegapunk acts antagonistic to avoid Luffy from fucking over Dragon in any regard, especially. Now, maybe that would have fallen true, and it's also a good way for him to figure out about the Kobe stuff, which I'll talk about in more detail in a future video. But it's there's so many different options with Vegapunk, and the fact that she was revealed to be a woman is very interesting, because it really does up the stocks of the revolutionary theory a lot more because of Vankov's ability and stuff. And like, again, it could just be cloned and shit, but that also has its own things that you could say up the stocks or down the stocks if you want. I don't know, but it is something to look into. But with that being said, what do you guys think Vegapunk will do in this arc, and do you think she's a revolutionary? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And with that being said, all praise the giant robot, and goodbye. Oh, damn, that was a nice snap.